Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul. Hope you're having an amazing day. Are you thinking of buying a new graphics card? As you probably know, a GPU is no small investment, and so you want to ensure that you have the best GPU for your money. To that end, there are some very intriguing rumours concerning Nvidia's RTX 50 series, namely that we will see a refresh with some potential change in specifications, but the primary difference will be an increase in VRAM. This is going to affect the 5080 as well as the 5070 series, but also maybe the 5060. There's a lot of other stuff that we're going to be talking about in this video, so we're going to get right into it after this quick message from the sponsor of the video. If you're running a copy of Windows 10 which isn't activated, of course, not only do you have to worry about the missing customization options, but there's also that annoying Windows desktop watermark reminding you to activate. Today's video is sponsored by WhoKeys.com, and they've an excellent price on Windows 10 Professional as well as Home keys. Yeah, and they also of course sell games. I've bought a few Windows 10 keys with my own personal account to test everything was legit and worked in preparation for this sponsored video. You can pick up one of their keys for 25% off using the coupon code RGT in the checkout. There's links to their website in the video description. Also, if you're building a few systems, there's bundles available too. Again, you can check out WhoKeys.com and use the coupon code RGT for 25% off the listed Windows 10 key prices. Now, to refresh your memory, if you excuse the pun, the 5080 naturally launched with 16GB of VRAM, and I said at the time, it's okay, but 16GB, it just doesn't seem quite enough for a GPU that's got that amount of performance. I would have much preferred a slightly wider bus, and of course, for the GPU to have had like 20GB at minimum, ideally 24GB. As for the 5070, I think this was perhaps even more egregious. The fact that it's only got 12GB of VRAM really meant that you started to run into VRAM limitations with a lot of titles at 1440p and especially 4K. Now, you can argue that the 5070 at 4K isn't exactly the target performance of the card, but you also have to take into consideration 1 or 2 years' time, especially as Unreal Engine becomes more and more complicated. And let's face it, guys, people typically don't just upgrade their GPU every 12 months or so. So I think 12GB for the 5070 was definitely the worst out of the cards. Like, you could, I would say that the 5060 Ti, the 8GB, not great by any means, that was pretty bad, but at least you have the option to go with the 16GB model. But yeah, and I did testing, of course, with the 5070, and I found that it was actually being outperformed in some games with the 5060 Ti. Anyway, fast forward to today, Copperdight 7 Kimmy, as this slightly older information is already leaked, that we're going to see the RTX 5080 Super with 84 SM. So this is the same number of SM as the base 5080. The primary difference is while the bus is also the same, 256-bit, Nvidia will be utilizing 3GB memory modules, of course, rather than 2GB. So this means that the card will have 24GB of RAM, which I think is a lot more appealing. Unfortunately, because the bus width isn't any wider, it's not like memory bandwidth can go up considerably higher, but I think 24GB should be more than okay for that card. Now, we'll get into release date information in just a moment, but I want to bring your attention to an article on 3D Center. Of course, I'll leave a link to this in the video description, but you can see that the 5070 Super and the 5070 base Super are being hinted at here. So the number of SM is not 100% confirmed yet, but allegedly between 70 and 74. That's on a 256-bit bus, with the 5070 Super potentially a 50 SM GPU with a 192-bit bus. Now, again, we can almost certainly imagine that the 5070 Super, for example, would no longer be using just 2GB modules. That would be going up to 3GB. Therefore, as you can imagine, this would allow a 18GB card to release, which I think is absolutely fine. It's a shame that the bus width isn't going up, but unless they were to use like GB203 and then obviously say, well, you know what, we can say that these cards don't hit this criteria for, let's say, the 5070 whatever, so, or the 5080 or whatever, they can start, utilizing yields. But realistically, I don't know if they would want to start increasing the number of SM. It would be great if they did. Perhaps AMD will continue to pile on a lot of pressure. The 9060 XT has been very favorably received. It looks a really nice card. It's going to be very interesting over the next couple of months to see what the sales figures are like for that. But yeah. Now, what I've been hearing is that the 5070 Super is quite likely to launch, as well as the 5080. Again, Coppertite has already leaked the fact that this is going to be happening. The release date, of course, these guys, 3D Center, which again I will link to in the video description, they are stating end of the year or 2026. One of the sources I've spoken to has had pretty good information with Nvidia in the past. They have told me that they don't think the cards are going to launch until 2026, but the thing is, nothing is solid at the moment, and the specifications with Nvidia, they change really, really quickly. Like, if you look back at the 50 series, before the cards actually launched, and also the 40 series, there were so many, actually the 30 series as well, if memory serves, there were so many updates to the exact layout of the the 3080, for example, or the 4080 and the 4090 and so on. However, it also is quite likely, in my personal opinion, that Nvidia will release a super update. So the big question is, should you buy now or should you wait? Well, naturally, if you're considering picking up an RTX 5090 or a 5060 Ti, this doesn't really affect you. The 5080, I think it very much depends on how often you upgrade your system. The 16GB should probably be okay for the next year or two, and then obviously you can sell the card. On the other hand, I would also very much understand why you would not want to be stuck with a 16GB model. The 5070 base card I personally wouldn't touch with 12GB of VRAM. I think that's probably about the worst GPU in the 50 series lineup. That is probably controversial to some people. I mean, there is also the 8GB 5060 Ti, but I'm not counting that because there is also the 16GB model. And again, it's not great. 8GB exists. I'm not defending it, but at the very least, customers can go with the 16GB model. Although, of course, that does mean you need to actually understand the difference, which is a whole different kettle of fish. So yeah, I would potentially wait if your card is okay, or maybe go with AMD if you're desperate, unless you really want to stick to Nvidia. But again, it's going to be very interesting to see what the sales figures are like for RDNA 4 over the coming weeks and months. I also want to mention the RTX 5050. Coppertite 7 has already leaked the specifications of this, but basically we're looking at 20 SM on 128-bit bus. The alleged release date here is July. I want to confirm that that is actually something I've been told as well by a few people. I actually got told this a couple of days ago, but I've been like screwing around with camera stuff and dealing with some real life things, including taking my cat to the vet. They're okay, but ear infection has been a whole thing. So yeah, but yeah, July is the date I'm hearing. Unfortunately, I don't have an exact release date. On the other hand, it is the RTX 5050, so I don't really think that the majority of you who are watching this are probably going to be super interested in it. Depending on the pricing, which ultimately is the big deal, like used cards at the moment, at least in the UK, you can get some really nice deals. Like, I think it was the 2080 Ti, the 2080, the 3080, they've been available for like, depending on the model, obviously, the 3080 is not the same price as the 2080 Ti, but you're looking at like $300 or so, maybe even a little bit cheaper. And some of the RDNA 2 cards, like the 6700 XT, at least when I looked a couple of days ago, they were really cheap on eBay. I can't obviously say what it's like in your specific region because, well, I can't check every country with their used market. But let me know in the comments below what you have been finding, what's going on with your used prices. With that said, guys, apologies for not being putting out videos over the last couple of days, but things will return to normal, I promise. And there are a couple of very cool videos that are planned over the next few days, and yeah, normal service will resume. With that said, Again, I've been messing around with the camera setup. There's a few other changes here, so I took on some of your feedback from the previous video. I'm using like a new camera at the moment, which is an Osbot one. Full disclosure, I was sent this for review, and obviously that's one of the reasons I've also been testing it out. But I think it's a really nice camera upgrade, so I'm probably going to be using it as a primary camera going forward and doing some other bits and pieces. So yeah. Anyway, with that said, take care of yourselves. Have an amazing day. Bye for now.